let's get started then. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about how to build a healthy community and without toxicity, or at least give you some tools of how to eliminate it. And first of all, we'll start by introducing ourselves. My name is Susie. I am a marketing and communications manager at LPT, a indie dev in Liverpool in the UK. Prior to that, I was the community management discipline lead at Paradox Interactive and also their influencer marketing manager. And prior to that, I did marketing and community consulting for many different game companies all over the world. So,
hi, I'm Samantha Abernathy. I am the social media and community manager at Skybound Games, and prior to that, I was at Comtois doing social media and associate producing.
Hi, I'm Christina Maya. I'm an event manager at Unity. Prior to that, I was at Twitch and Discord, and I run a community called Latinx in Gaming.
I'm Margaret Crone, and I do not have as cool of an accent as many of these other wonderful panelists. But I work at Intrepid Studios. I'm their community and marketing lead, and I'm also the chief marketing officer for Roll4, which is an online tabletop RPG community. And I've been in the industry for 13 years. I'm not going to list off the entirety of that, because that would be a long time.
Yeah.
You'd be here for a while.
Yeah. I also don't have a cool accent, so I'm sorry, it's disappointing.
I think you sound cool.
I could try to do, no, I'm not going to try to do an accent. Yeah, so I'm the communications director at Kid Fox Games. We're making a game called Boyfriend Dungeon and Lucifer Within Us, and we're also publishing games like Six Ages and Dwarf Fortress. And I've worked as a community consultant for various other games, but I won't list them. Just cool. Hi.
My name is Fiona Martin. I'm doing the social media and I'm a community ambassador for Paradox Entertainment, and currently I'm working on Bloodlines 2.
Yeah, so we're going to be sticking quite tightly to some time guidelines so that we've got enough time to do questions at the end. So be thinking of your questions whilst we go through stuff. And also I apologise if I descend into a coughing fit. I unfortunately caught a cold when I was on the plane over here. Yay, travel.
Love to get sick before PAX.
I know, right? Now I get
Patient zero, that's what we're finding
the
out.
PAX pox on top of
Oh,
the
God.
illness. It's
No,
wonderful.
you just jinxed yourself.
I did.
Oh
It's already too
Everyone
late
wash
for
your
me.
hands. Just a lot. Like, I don't know if you are already, just do it more. Do it now, do it after, do it more.
How to build a community and stay hygienic.
Yes.
Okay, so let's kick off the first topic. What are your tried and true best practices for encouraging a healthy community? So let's all jump in. Whoever wants to go first.
Victoria, go.
Oh gosh. Sorry, I just noticed like I'm missing a backing on my pin. I stabbed myself. So, that's great. Okay, so tried and true best practice. Okay, so number one, there's several different things, but one, for sure, rule enforcement, and because it doesn't matter if you have rules if there's no one to enforce them fairly and to everyone, and consistently. That's always really important for sure. But I think one of the things that I've thought about a lot is that actually just being someone that in the community where basically, since you usually are the one hopefully setting the tone in the community, that you understand what you want from the community, so what's considered polite in your terms, because it's very easy to know when someone's completely breaking the rules. It's harder when they're kind of towing the line and testing you, and it's really knowing your boundaries for that. That's kind of the very rudimentary way I think that I sort of start off the best practices for a healthy community.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I agree with that 100%. Community guidelines for me are the single most important thing for building a community. And you have to be super clear when you're writing your rule set or your guidelines to include even the most common sense of things. You wouldn't think you would need to include things like no racism, no misogyny, but you do, because if people step out of line or kind of try to bounce around with those, you have to have something clear that you can hold up to them and say, look, these are the guidelines, you are overstepping and this is the consequence. And you should be really clear about the consequences you have. So when you're posting your community guidelines on, say, Discord, let them know if you're going to get muted for certain things or if you're going to get permabanned. You have to make it clear up front so no one can, basically argue with that. But, the community shouldn't feel like they're being policed all the time, but there should be, really clear guidelines so that they know where the line is.
And it doesn't have to be something super complicated. I mean, you can look at the rules of PAX as a fairly, easy guide as to something that you can use. I mean, obviously they have it a little bit more for something in person, but it's a really good example. It's just like, don't be a bad person. Like, a lot of good Twitch streamers use a similar kind of guideline. It's broken down, very simple, and then just sort of laying out like, these are a very simple set of ramifications that will happen if you break these rules.
Not every community has the same rules, right?
Yeah.
What might be acceptable for you might not be acceptable for another community, and so on and so forth. It just depends on like what type of atmosphere you're trying to cultivate.
I would also say that don't be afraid to change things, not on the fly, because things are always evolving in your community and context is a big thing. So you may have to also like amend rules, change things, and people might push against that, but you've usually got good reasons for it, and if you explain it to people, I think they're quite happy to understand and go along.
I think also leading by example is something really important. When you're interacting with your community, it's important to be friendly, to be kind, to be all the things you want the best members of your community and the worst
Sure.
to do.
And rewarding those who do follow that line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And transparency is key. Like, if you do something wrong in the community or something comes up or there's a mistake or something, hold your hands up, tell them the reasons why and explain, because when they see that you're acting honestly and transparent, then that behavior is learned and it continues all the way through. So it's really good, because when you're building a community, you're building trust, and they won't trust you if you don't trust them, and you have to kind of give and take.
I think building off of that in general, one of the key things for building that healthy community is communication on both directions. So that transparency and that communication goes both ways. A lot of traditional social media managers or marketing managers think about it as a one-way street in a lot of ways. They post something, they share something, they share an update, a dev diary, a new piece of content, and it goes out there, and they just expect it to live out there without really doing much about it afterwards. And so I think that's one of the main things I think we all are really, big proponents of, is engaging with your community beyond that initial post, talking to them, sharing with them, and being just, genuine with them. It doesn't mean you have to say everything about what's happening, but just being honest with them and real.
Yeah. So kind of not really related, sorry,
Oh,
but
it's
totally going
it's
off
fine.
track. One of the things that I found really useful is usually if someone is breaking the rules, and they're coming maybe from a place that's actually honest and they're not just being a troll, usually just telling them why you think what they're doing is wrong, or like why there's a problem with it privately, instead of like calling them out in a very public space and like making them feel very defensive and shameful. Just DMing them and telling them hey, like this is the rules and this is why it was not cool, and usually they're all like really okay with that. It's just when you kind of put them on the spot that they feel very defensive, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and to go back to the community guidelines, that's why it's so important to have that rule set, because when you DM them privately and you refer them back to the rules, some of the times you'll find out that they slipped through the net, or like they didn't even realize they'd kind of gone over that line, but when you highlight it and and you put them in a position where they don't feel shamed, then the situation tends to clear itself up.
And I think because every community is different, they could be coming from a place where something's maybe more accepted than in the place that you're in.
Yeah.
And they just honestly don't know that. So let them know, like you said, in a DM can actually be almost a positive experience, and they themselves then feel like, oh, this is a place I can actually talk and feel comfortable.
And let's be honest, most people don't actually read, so sometimes it's just nice to remind them, hey, you broke rule number 2. Go check out our rules
People
here.
don't read everything.
Yeah, and if you're really clear about your guidelines, the nice thing is that often you'll have, valuable community members who also will help you police it without being, necessarily community moderators, but just your community members will start to help you enforce it by just being natural, good members of the community. So without, getting power hungry, they will, say, hey, don't talk like that, like that's not welcome here.
Yeah, exactly. And also the other wonderful thing about having these guidelines is that it highlights the really positive and great, useful members of the community. So you have these gold star community members, and it makes it easier for you to kind of raise them up and show everybody the great stuff that they're doing, which is really nice.
And without necessarily even giving them, you know, any special privileges, you can still highlight them and shout them out for doing awesome stuff in your community. And, you know, of course, if they're creating awesome content like cosplayers or fan artists or Let's Players that you are really enjoying in your community, I mean, go, you know, have fun just shouting them out. It can be as simple as just retweeting something or you know, posting something on any of your channels that highlights them. And then if they're a positive and encouraging member of the community, then that's a really good way to encourage that healthy engagement.
And I would say, just as a little add-on for that, when you're looking for people who, you know, you want to be a healthy part of the community, even though it takes a little bit extra time, you know, maybe go through their tweets or their content, and just to make sure it's just something that fits with your community guidelines, also just helps a lot as well.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, the community is an ongoing conversation, and you know, you have to interact in that just as much as they do. So a like goes a long way, you know, a retweet if it's appropriate, or a reply, or even just looking through at the general trend of like what people are talking about, what people are asking, and then addressing that on your feeds and saying, you know, hey, we saw you were talking about this, this, and this. I just wanted to clarify, this is what's happening. Just so they've got that acknowledgement, so that they know that they're actually seen, because a lot of people just want to be seen and just want to be heard. And you know, when it comes to community management, it's a two-way street. You're not only the voice for the devs, you're the voice for the people, and you have to bring that back as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to tack also onto that, we're just tacking on things all the time. But I think what you need to do is also to be aware of when you're feeling burnt out, especially because being in community means you're usually giving a lot emotionally, and like, you know, you want to be there for them. It kind of feels like your baby. You're like, oh, but I care so much about them. But you can't encourage a positive, healthy community if you yourself are struggling. And if you have like those sorts of feelings, like it's okay to step back and just take a break away from Twitter or Discord or whatever. Like, your community is usually going to be very understanding of that. So do take care of yourself, to be clear.
Especially because it affects your mindset. When you're burned out, sometimes you only see the negative, and the person is approaching you with the best of intentions, and you might not respond the way you want to, or the way that is really true to you, the brand, and the community that you're building.
And if you have someone else on your team too, sometimes if you feel like how you're responding is really emotional, you can also be like, hey, can you just read this to make sure that I'm not being too aggressive or something like that.
Yeah, and it's really easy to take on the emotions of the community, because you know, when you're dealing with communities, it can get, you know, quite emotional, and that can be a really positive thing, but it can also be a really negative thing. And you know, when all you do is, you know, during the day is be a part of that, you can bring that home quite easily. So self-care is super important.
Yeah, and it ultimately comes down to, like, you care a lot about the community that you're cultivating.
Yeah.
And if someone's like, oh, you don't care, you're like, yeah, I do. I care. Exactly. You want to say that, but you also need to, you know, take a step back and breathe.
Yeah. Okay, let's get on to the next topic, otherwise we will run out of time. Okay, so next topic. When interacting with your community, how do you approach moderation, and what tools do you use for channel management? So, and I think we should kind of cover, if we can, like a mixture of like paid tools and free tools for people who are on a budget and stuff, because it's not always that easy.
Yep. There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I can kick it off if you like.
Go for it.
Like, I use a whole bunch. So I found, even though I can use paid tools, I still use TweetDeck because it is so helpful. Like, it's great if you want to track certain hashtags, it's great for scheduling things, it's great for following certain feeds, and really kind of getting a measure of like what's going on in your community, and really kind of getting some insight into that and digging deep. Hootsuite is fantastic for like analytics, so when you actually want to track what like all of your social channels are doing, and kind of really kind of get into to know what works and what doesn't work, so you can kind of tweak your campaigns to match what you're doing. And then for project management, because you have like so many different like parts of your campaign, I quite often use Trello, and I usually use the free version of that, because there's something really satisfying about moving the little card all the way to the end when it's done. Yeah. And I'm someone who enjoys lists, so this is extremely satisfying to me.
Yeah, I think on the front of like Hootsuite, there's also other platforms too, like Buffer and things of that sort. So you can, there's a bunch of those type of things. I think if you're somebody who's managing multiple social channels on various platforms, which they just keep adding more. They're like, would you like another social platform? No, I already have 10. But yeah, so I think that those are great platforms to be able, or those are great software that you're able to use through the web, and many of them have mobile apps, which is really nice to schedule for all of your social channels all at once, which is really, really handy for somebody who has to do that. The only problem that occurs sometimes is if you have assets that have to change based on the platform that you're using. So sometimes you'll have to schedule like 2 different tweets or two different social messaging at the same time, but at least you can do that and have it, like you can go to PAX and not worry about social because it's just doing its thing.
Yeah. And just real quick, adding about TweetDeck, one thing that's really nice about it is for free you can add people to your team without actually giving them the login credentials for your account. That was one of the best things that I discovered about that software, or that system is, you know, sometimes I have interns, which is really nice, but you know, I don't necessarily want to give an intern our login credentials to our Twitter, so you can actually just add them as a contributor on TweetDeck, and that's really convenient.
Yeah, and you can also revoke their, you know, rights to it quite quickly as well.
Very
if anything was
fast.
to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes the same for like Hootsuite and Buffer too. Yep, those are usually paid options for them.
Super appreciate you have a question. Would you be able to hold it until the end?
Oh, it's not a question. I just didn't hear what the second one was.
Hootsuite?
Buffer?
No, I think it was before Buffer. It was TweetDeck.
Trello?
Trello?
Trello, yeah.
That's
Trello's
more like project management.
Yeah, so it's more kind of like it's more for like your whole campaign management.
Yeah.
So you can know what you're scheduling and stuff like that.
It's like Jira or Asana or anything like that.
It's really great.
Also recommend Airtable, another
Airtable.
yeah, another one that has a free version. Personally, I've never needed to upgrade to the paid version. It's really extensive, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and paid tools, which are kind of interesting if you want to kind of see what your whole reach and where it's actually going. Meltwater is quite good. It's very expensive. Like
Only
it's
use it if your
crazy.
company's gonna
Only
pay for it.
use it if like someone has a budget and is like willing to lay that down. But it basically measures everything from like where you're being seen in magazines to like how far your tweets or social posts are reaching, and it's really handy to kind of get an idea of really what's working and what isn't.
Yeah. And one thing is for Meltwater, which is the only reason why I'm actively using it, is because our PR team already uses it at my company, but it measures sentiment. And sentiment is a very, very complicated thing to measure in social media.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's not exact. I think Meltwater does it pretty well for the sites that are currently trying to measure that. I have not yet found a free tool that has done it. But if you guys know of one, please tweet at me and tell me, because I would really like to
I know
know it.
Hootsuite does do sentiment as well.
It does, yeah.
It's kind of
it
one of those
costs
things
more.
you have
Yeah.
to train it. Well, yeah. And then if you want to be able
Sprout
to train
does
it,
too,
you have
but-
to be able to have the tags, which is even higher tier system. But yeah.
Whereas Meltwater, it's incorporated into the price, but also that price is rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it unless your company is paying for it. That's not something you want to pay for on your own.
Yes, or if you're Indian, you can't afford any of the channel management tools.
Yeah,
It feels
exactly.
great. No, but yeah, I mean, I've used Hootsuite before. I've used Sprout Social before when I was working for a different company and they had money to pay for it, or wanted to pay for it, I suppose. But a lot of the time, and I know a lot of indies kind of face these problems that we don't use all these channel management things, and I still think you can do like really good community management and whatnot without all these things. There's honestly using spreadsheets and just seeing the analytics in Twitter and Facebook and all that is really helpful. Actually getting to the how do you approach moderation within the community. So one thing I do, especially when I know we have a big announcement coming up, and this is what I did especially for Dwarf Fortress, was that, especially on our Discord, I ramped up our bots and the censors and told my mods, like, hey, we're expecting a huge influx of people. I'm literally going to ban every single swear word, even the ones that I use myself and like that is normally okay in the community. I banned them because I just wanted to set the tone when people first join. Like, if it's going to bother you that you can't say like the F word, just, you can go to a different Discord, it's fine, like, I don't really mind, or you can, like, adjust, and then, like, once it starts calming down and, like, I can actually control the influx of people, because it's usually just me handling everything, then I start, you know, alleviating, like, you know, all the censors, and then people start getting more comfortable, and they're already used to the tone of the community, so then they don't start doing all of the terrible things that I'm afraid people will do. But yeah, so there's a lot of good free resources out there, and honestly, community managers, I feel we aren't really into industry secrets. If you just tweet at any of us, we'll probably be like, oh yeah, we use this, this, and this.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah.
Mostly we all use the same things too.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, TweetDeck.
Yeah. I got a couple slightly interesting ones, I guess. So first of all, I use the Asana, but because I like the social media calendar that comes with it, and it's also free. So if you're looking for something a bit more visual, it has different colors and things like that, depending on what social media you're looking to post on. I'd also like to say that Discord can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people, mainly because you have to implement bots, they all do certain things, you may have to have multiple bots, but I would like to say that Discord sent out an email recently talking about how they're now going to include a lot of bot features with the service, including doing like get statistics and information and things like that, get stats for you. BitLink is also really good, and it's free if you want to see where, say you're posting a new dev diary or something like that, you then use the BitLink, and then you can see where people are coming from, which is really good to see where you're most active.
And you can make that a private one too, in the sense of like no one else can read your analytics too, and then you can also utilize like you know, a messaging like blizz.ly, like Blizzard does that, and that so on and so forth.
Yeah, make it more personal.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing that I use personally, and this did cost me money, I think it cost me like $50 a year, which wasn't too bad. I use a program called Shift. What it does, it combines everything that I use into one, whether that be my email accounts or my work Twitter or work Discord, and it helps me not do things like posts are meant to go on my work Twitter or my personal Twitter, because I've got it all under one.
But are you really a community manager until you've asked them?
I've already done it, yes. You'll do it. The thing is, you'll do it and have a laugh about it as well, unless it's like super bad and then you're like, this is crap. But I find that really helps me, because sometimes having 14 million tabs open are great, and I will get mixed up. So having something like that I actually know what I'm looking at really does help.
Yeah. Just to add, using Bitly is great if you're working with influencers, because you can give influencers, you know, a different Bitly link and track like how they're converting. So, for instance, if you are wanting to use an influencer to send them to buy something from the store or like wish listing and things like that, you can track all of that, so you know which influencers you're working with actually do convert and like which things are actually working and whatnot. So it's really nice, because it can be really hard to track influencer stuff because they have their own channels and you don't necessarily have access to their analytics or statistics, and this kind of gives you something to go on, which is good.
Another great feature about Bitly is it can produce QR codes, depending if you upgrade, which are really nice to put on social images, at events, anything that you might need something quick for people to scan.
Eventbrite does that too, which is handy if you're running an event. And then also, I lost my train of thought.
Let's talk a little bit about moderation before we need to move on.
Yeah.
So like, I wanted to talk about like using the chatbots on Twitch.
Yeah.
That's really great for moderating a Twitch community, because you know, like, it's quite easy for a Twitch chat to get completely out of control. If you have like 10,000 people watching, you can't like necessarily go in and be deleting or banning or muting people like when the stream of chat is just like flying down. It can be really, really hard. So if you program, you know, to remove like certain words or certain phrases and things like that, it makes your life a lot easier. Also making sure that, seeing if anybody in your community wants to volunteer as mods to like be watching during the streams and have them helping you out, because Twitch streams, once they start to get popular, it's generally more than a one-person job.
Shout out to mods.
Yeah.
Thanks, Guy, for my mods. Love you so much.
And I think
on the front of mods, I was actually going to bring that up when you were talking about it, is letting them know things in advance is always handy if you can. Like we have our whole mod team is under NDA, so like we can be able to share them information with them a little bit. Not maybe super in advance, but like, hey, today this thing is happening at like this time, prepare yourselves. And just also having those things prepared on your end is always good too. And the one that I was going to say was vidIQ. If you've never used it before, it's super handy because a lot of those stats, like YouTuber stats and things of that sort, like you just can't get those. And vidIQ is a really handy tool to be able to look at. Yeah, and you can copy and take you know, things that you wouldn't be able to do before. And also looking at the channels that are trending for your topics is really handy.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, when it comes to moderation and all your different social channels, mods are key. Again, having your clear community guidelines are key because without them, people are just going to run riot. And just, you know, knowing the sentiment and the type of direction that you want your community to kind of go in, because you're guiding that, you're helping that kind of happen. And so you have to know, you know, what direction you're shepherding them in, basically.
Something that I do for my moderators too is, obviously I have a community guidelines that are available to like the public, but we have an internal community guidelines, and that also breaks down actions. So we have like what a clarification is and what a warning is and where these steps should escalate. And also there's a timeline of things where like they don't go through that process. That person is just a bad person and that they shouldn't have the liberty of going through that whole timeline. And so just being very clear with them about what to do, because I find that you know, sometimes I've joined a community team and the moderator's like, well, I didn't know there was rules for this, or I don't know how to take action. And I think making sure that they have the tools and understanding of like what they can do and be consistent with that action will make a difference in your community too, because they'll realize like, oh, what I did is bad, and that person did the same thing, and that's bad.
Exactly. Okay, right, moving on. So, now hopefully some of the fun stuff. Can you share some of your favorite stories from your communities? I can kick it off if you guys want to think. Yeah. Okay, so when I was at Paradox, there was a really lovely example. There was a guy who was blind, and he really wanted to play grand strategy games. And with grand strategy games, obviously, there's a lot of like micromanagement, a lot of reading, a lot of. It's basically, you know, the equivalent of reading a book and just clicking enter multiple times. And he really wanted to be a part of the community, but the games were not set up for, you know, to be accessible to blind people because, you know, who would have thought that they would want to play? Of course they do. Anyway, some lovely community members rose up and offered to do private sessions with him where they were reading everything out loud and basically taking him on a journey. Somebody converted a lot of stuff to Braille so that he could read what was happening for himself. And it was just amazing, so uplifting, and seeing like so many people work together to make sure that this guy was able to play. And then we had a couple of other blind players that heard about this and then got involved as well. And, you know, it went on to a whole chain of just loveliness. So, you know, your community can be such a shining beacon of, you know, kindness. And there's so many fantastic examples. And quite often, you know, the sad examples or like moments of anger kind of outshine all of those. But I have more happy moments than sad ones, so it's really nice. People are good. Okay.
Go for it. Yeah. Okay. I don't know, because it's one of those things where there's a lot of nice stories, so it's kind of hard to pick one, and then you don't want to be that one person that's going on and on. That's fine. Oh, okay. Welcome. But yeah, so I think. Oh, there's so many.
We left the most room for this section.
I knew there was going to be a lot of thinking and.
Okay. Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many. Okay. So I think one of my favorite ones was when. So at the time of near the Dwarf Fortress announcement, I'm talking about Dwarf Fortress a lot. I don't know why, but we had a bunch of people join, and they were trolls, and because it was just me taking care of the Discord, it was a lot to handle at once because I felt like I always had to be awake, and I was really nervous to like fall asleep because it was like, oh, what if like someone comes in, because it was just a lot of banning and like definitely just posting like the worst stuff. And I was sitting on the floor of my office because when I'm stressed, I sit on the floor of my office, like not sure what to do, and I'm like just like making sure everything's okay and really nervous. And then as these things started happening, I started getting all these community members like jumping into my DMs and being like, hey, do you need help? Like, do you need a moderator? Like, I don't need to moderate forever, or I can be a moderator forever if you want me to be, but like we can take shifts. Like they're all coordinating like, hey, so if you're asleep during this time, we can make sure we're like awake during this time. And it was just so sweet. It was just a nice like random coordination of effort to make sure that I wasn't dying. Yeah, and I would die for my mods, okay? That is my story.
Mods are the true heroes.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I got into community and then event management is because when I was younger, in college, you're just kind of alone a lot, right? You're playing a video game by yourself and all your WoW friends are so far away and you just wish you could be near them, and the only time you can see them are events like these. So when I moved to New York City, I had no friends and I was watching other people have fun. And I was like, I want to have fun. So I made a League of Legends community. And it started with just me yelling into the wind, does anybody want to play League? And from that, we grew to about 5,000 people. And some people got married. Some people have children now. One girl just called me during PAX earlier to tell me she got her job in the gaming industry for the first time. She's been working so hard for years, and these people are my family, these people are my friends, and I think the best part of community, the best part of this is that you are building a family together. With a game, with being Latino, being something, it is all about finding that family. I love that.
I think for me, for those of you who don't know, Skybound Games took over the Telltale's The Walking Dead in the final season when Telltale unfortunately went under. And so at the time, the team was 5 of us, and the social team was 1 of us, and actually still is, and that 1 of us was me. And so things got very, very, very busy very, very fast, and it became just pretty hectic very quickly. And at first I was just massively overwhelmed. We announced at New York Comic-Con last year at the Walking Dead panel. Robert dropped the information, and it was overwhelming to say the least. And at first I was like, I don't think I can handle this. This is just going to be too much. But the outpouring of support from the community, just the joy and love from everyone over this project made it all worth it. I saw beautiful, beautiful gift sets of people thanking us specifically. I saw videos that many of the known Let's Players made, just reacting when we dropped the first teaser trailer. That was, one of the most beautiful times. And to have people reacting and specifically thanking us, it's been one of the most valuable community experiences. So I mean, I've just been so lucky to work on this title and to see such a positive, passionate community. But also at the same time, it's been pretty crazy, taking over something in this sort of never before experienced kind of situation, I feel. But just the community's made it all worth it. So I feel very passionate to have this healthy community and to give them as much love and appreciation back.
I think for me, I look back at the first community I was part of, which was EverQuest. And for me, EverQuest was a big part of my life, and it still is. And I've watched people get married, have kids, now their kids play with them. That to me is really cool. It's exciting. And one of the things that I talked about in a previous panel that I was on too is that how technology has changed, and how you were talking about how you were alone playing, and now we're able to talk to people all across the world, and now some of my best friends are those people, and being able to meet with them in real life has been, a joy, I think, for me. So I think that to me, as a culmination of all of the things, has been really just exciting, just seeing people grow and come together and do amazing things together and find their passions through other people and getting the encouragement that they needed from all those people. Like that to me is a positive part of it.
Yeah.
One thing that I remember most closely, probably because it's more recent, is one of the tabletop RPG shows. I have a character where I'm in a lesbian relationship with them, and we had a person in our community who had never come out to their family before. And so I think that was really cool to me to have them be like, that inspired me to talk to them, and they were accepting of me.
Oh, that's so nice.
I think for me, I'm pretty new to the whole community shenanigans. So that
That's what we call it.
That's what I call it. So I haven't had too many big stories happen, even though I've been in communities myself for many years on the internet. So it's the little things right now for me, like watching people within your community making friends with other people that they've met through your community. It's just, your heart just swells a little bit because you're just like, oh my gosh, like I'm able to give them this space.
Maybe they'll get married and have babies.
Yeah, exactly. You never know.
She'll message us in the group chat, someone had a baby.
Also people who are like, maybe they're not going through a great time, maybe they're unwell, maybe they're dealing with something, and sometimes you'll get messages just out there in the community saying, hey, I'm glad this exists, and that's the things that really like keep you going, and to me they're really good stories of not what you want in your community, but yeah, what you want in your community. It does become your family, which is tough, but also just really rewarding. Yeah.
What you were saying was interesting to me because I've had people talk to me who are kind of maybe negative people in the community to start with, and a lot of the time it's just because they're going through something.
Mm-hmm.
And just having someone to talk to about it changes their tune, and then all of a sudden they become this positive person in your community.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is something that's, just taking the time to talk to somebody. I mean, we don't all have time to talk to every single person, because that's a lot of people, but those people that you can interact with, they can be the ones who then interact with other people and share that love and wealth.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing is that every single person in your community has at least one thing in common with each other. They're all there to play the game. So you all have that love, so you all have that starting point to kind of move through. And like whether you're the community manager or a dev and you join that community, you're all in that community no matter whether you're the one kind of spearheading it. That is your family. And even when you leave jobs and you leave communities, you still remain part of that because the love for it and the passion that you have, because you get so dedicated and so passionate when you are part of this, it doesn't ever go away. So, maybe you've moved on from another community, but you're still always part of that.
I have so many stories of that.
Yeah.
Somebody who's been in the industry for so long and gone on so many, I mean, obviously EverQuest was a big thing for me, and then I think another one that's always a tried and true part of my heart is like the PlanetSide 2 community. Like when I left that community to go move to another job, they sent me like flowers, cards, like I was like, how am I supposed to take this? I already had to pack my like, I don't know, and I was just crying. It was like just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still
People
like
that will be in your
multiplaying
heart
Stellaris with like 50 people.
When I left the last game that I worked on, I live streamed it every twice a week for my previous company, and when I left, the community had put together a compilation of their favorite moments of the live because we had been on the stream every week for 2 years at that point, so there was a lot of silly moments, a lot of dumb faces, and so I still have that video, and every now and then if I'm feeling like a little overwhelmed, I'm just like, I'm gonna watch this.
Something, I don't know if there's other people out here. Actually, I'm curious if people will put their hands up for me, because I know we're going to move to Q&A soon. But
Yeah, in a
how
minute,
many
after
of-
you finish speaking.
Yeah, how many of you work in the industry on a community team or a marketing team? There's other fellow people out there.
And how many want to? Even after this talk?
Something
fuzzy.
Something that we've done, which I think is really fun, is taking all of the positive things that you get and making a positivity wall of just like all the nice comments.
I do that
all the
too.
fan
Box folder.
art, all the fan art. I mean, taking people's names off of them so that for their own privacy, but like putting all their fan art up there, just having this wall of like whenever you get that message of somebody being like, "You're a jerk, I hate you, you made my game suck," and you're like, "Great, I'm gonna go to that wall and read all the people who actually enjoyed it. Because like sometimes you just need that moment to take a break, and I think having a visual aspect, because I think a lot of us are visual like people, can really help just make you be like, yeah, I'm loved, it's okay. There's just this one angry person, it's gonna be fine.
Right. Even if it's just a folder on your computer that you can open up every now and then, I recommend that as well.
Well, it's nice for your other people in your you know that you work with too that are
Oh, for
outside
sure.
of the community team to walk by and be like inspired by that. Like these are the people who play our game.
That's really good.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you're working remotely, it's really good to have that folder in your computer as well.
Yeah.
You know, you just sit in your house all by yourself, and you're just like, oh, I'm sad.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now
Thank
it's
you,
time
guys.
for questions, if any of you guys have any questions. There's a mic there, so just line up and go at it.
Yeah, just, so if I suddenly just leave, it's not because I hate everyone. I have to run to another panel, so if you ever have any questions, feel free to tweet at me. I'll probably throw some business cards on the desk and you can grab it.
Do we actually want to go back to our page with our faces on it so
Yeah.
you guys can see
Yeah,
our
sure.
name? 'Cause if
Yeah, so if I suddenly run, thank you, this is
Yes.
but yeah, tweet stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we'll be taking questions until they kick us out.
sure. And feel free to tweet any of us afterwards.
Yeah. We like it.
We love to interact.
I'm really sorry for my username because I did not think it was going to become a professional one. So anyone who's from Scotland or thereabouts are looking at it going, how did she do that? Right? Sorry, but it is actually very funny. At the same
Earlier
time.
she was telling somebody hers, and I was just like, that is a long
long
one.
Yeah, it basically, I mean, if you don't know it, it's basically Bob Bag's a scrotum. So
Yeah. I remember when
You didn't know that? There you go.
No. Fiona, when you first started at Paradox and I had to like introduce you to HR and everything, I was just like, yeah, this is her username. And legal was like, is this person, have you checked this person? And I was like, she's fine. Anyway, first question?
So two things I've noticed with gamers is that they tend to have a really strong tendency to close ranks around their friends, even when their friends are being problematic. And they also tend to have a really strong complex around always being the victim, like they're always being picked on, so they're always the ones that are being hurt. So how do you deal with these kinds of mentalities and try to deal with these people that are often very much like they're being problematic in their communities, but they have like their friends closing ranks. Now it's starting to become a much bigger issue very quickly.
Yeah, the pitchfork mentality.
Yes, especially when they always like they're already in the mindset that they're the ones who are being wrong, and so you have to kind of like calm their sensibilities.
I have a lot of experience with this in the MMORPG community because we have people who are guild mates and who those guild mates will all bandwagon on one another's
Yes.
topics or what they think is right. A lot of it is just chatting with them and communicating with them, but I think at some point there are actions that need to be taken. And so for those users who are the naughty user out of the group, who are kind of making the others feel like it's okay to be that way, is taking that escalation and continuing to move it forward. And in some cases that means that they don't need to be part of your community necessarily. And I know that that is a drastic way to go about it, but
Yeah.
there's escalation processes, and that's why you have rules and guidelines for them to follow. And honestly, if one person is breaking them, then they're breaking them. Just because they're part of a guild or just because they're part of a big portion of your community, that doesn't give them the leeway to be able to do bad things or harass other users or
Yeah.
create chaos.
I would also add to that in the sense that if you have a particularly small community, it can be very intimidating and you can be scared to get rid of these people.
Yes,
You
exactly.
should get rid of them anyway because it will put other people off joining your community, because if someone comes over, they don't know you from Adam but they're interested, and then they see like super toxic atmosphere, it will put them off. So whilst you may go down in numbers at the beginning, you will only gain healthy numbers when people see how positive and how inclusive your actual community is. But you're not going to get that unless you actually go by your guidelines and get rid of the people who are causing the problem.
But like I said, take those first steps first,
Yeah.
and then if you can't get anywhere with them, then that's when it escalates.
Exactly.
Also, I think someone else mentioned this just real quick. Take that conversation separate from any sort of group
Oh, yeah.
atmosphere
Take
and
it
bring
private,
that and bring
always.
that privately as best you can.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a communication where it's back and forth, take it private.
Yeah.
Don't ever have those conversations in public public rooms. It will make you look bad, and then all 4 of them, or however many of them, will bandwagon on each other, and it'll just be an attack on you, and that's never what you want to take it.
Yeah, and before you know it, it escalates and other people decide to get involved, and yeah.
But also don't say anything that you wouldn't want screenshotted and shared.
Yes.
To the
Because they will
That one I know.
screenshot it and share it.
Anything you say privately to somebody, you be willing that they're going to post it everywhere
Yeah.
on social media.
Yeah.
We've learned that the hard way.
Don't tell anyone the expected age of Clementine, because then they will think that that's canon.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Forever and ever.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Hi, so I am the community manager for a game. We are to the point where we need to start adding maybe some like volunteer mods. So we have had some people volunteer in the past, and you go kind of like, I don't know about this one. So what are some of the common like either red flags or green flags you guys look for in volunteer moderators?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
So I would honestly, the red flags are, for me personally, are people who maybe don't align to what I'm saying publicly. Either they're saying something different publicly or they're saying something different privately. And I don't mean just different, but I mean like you feel like this is not someone who understands what these rules are. And even though it's really, really hard and they are a volunteer rather than say someone you've employed, you sometimes just have to take it one-on-one and say to them, hey, like just have that chat and say, hey, this is how I feel. Maybe you've screenshotted some examples, that might help, but really just approach them and say, this is what we're looking for, you're maybe not, like, this is what we see that we're not really happy with, but also just, try and make it like you're open to them changing. Maybe they just don't realize, or maybe, but you're right that when you first add mods, especially at the beginning of your community, things change, and sometimes people end up being different than you thought they were in the first place, and it's really hard to have that conversation, but it does need to happen. Just gotta be one-on-one on it.
What we do is, obviously we're looking at people who follow our guidelines and are shining beacons of our community, and so that's the first. And those people are usually the easiest, but even those people sometimes don't always understand moderation. So what I do is I have a few questions that are scenarios. Like if this situation was happening, how would you react to it? And it's kind of like, probably like 6 questions, really super easy, and then we kind of look at those and we're like, how did they answer them? And did they answer them in a way that like, that I think that we could train them to be better at it, or in a sense that like I think that they're going in the right route. And sometimes they're not perfect, but it's enough where you're like, I think that this person would be a good fit. So I think those can always help, as well as obviously if you already have feelings that you're uncomfortable with that person, then yeah, I would not trust your instincts.
Yeah, go your gut.
And then one other thing in terms of like red flags versus green flags, I think that green is they've been consistently helpful to other people in your community. If you have a game that's maybe a little bit complicated or has a lot of parts to it, and they're just like maybe providing guidance to newer players, that's generally a green flag for me. And then a consistent red flag is just being not necessarily negative about the game, but negative about people or only trying to police people. That's a red flag for me.
Yeah, and all of that, but I would also say before you bring anyone on, have a look at their personal accounts as well.
Yeah, that too.
And check that there's no alt-right stuff or anything that
Oh
you
yeah,
can be
we
happy
always do that.
Yeah, for sure. It's common sense, but it's just worth doing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
To kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, when you're looking to work with an influencer and you're looking at their community, what are the red flags, green flags for that kind of relationship?
Can I go for this one?
Sure.
Yeah, so like I work a lot with influencers. When I'm looking at an influencer's community and whether we want to actually work with them, I spend a lot of time hanging out in their chat just silently, just shadow watching, and I see how their communities interact with each other, but I also see like how they moderate. So if they have a trash community where like anything is being said and like nothing is being moderated, then they're not the influencer that you want to work with, because it doesn't matter that it's the influencer's community. When you're bringing new people that are interested in the game or whatever it is that you're trying to kind of bring onto, that community is an example of you.
And I'd like to just say that like there's a lot of small influencers out there, and I would say the most important thing is not how many followers or viewers or what you have, but like if you have a community, it's how the community is and how you are with or how they are with their communities.
And if you look some of the statistics for some of the smaller streamers, they have a very engaged amount of user base. So a lot of times they'll be like, hey, do this thing, and their users or their viewers will do them. Versus like a large streamer, they're only going to have like a small portion of the people who are going to interact.
Yeah. My general rule of thumb is when you're hiring influencers, if you hire bigger influencers, the people watching them are generally watching for their personalities. It can be a really good signifier for press and to also get other streamers interested.
Yeah.
But smaller, mid-tier streamers, they have a community base that converts super well because they're watching because they're interested in the game, so they're already primed for what it is that you've got going on, and they're more likely to listen to the advice of the influencer that they're actually watching. So,
I also see how they interact when I pay them. So if they don't show up, which has happened to me before, I'll remember that forever. So,
I've also worked with a lot of influencers and esports in that realm as well, and it is very much like, don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
But on the sense of like finding people, I kind of really agree. Just watching their content, looking at their social platforms, seeing how they interact with people, and if it fits your vibe, then go for it. If it doesn't, then move on. There's plenty of other people who are making wonderful content out there.
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very awesome. So one of the most important things for me as a community manager is being able to take personal time for myself and my mental health and everything, just so that you don't suffer from major burnout. What do you guys do to mitigate that for yourselves?
I actually have a community manager who I manage, and when I purposely on our calendar put a break time in the morning, a break time in the evening, and I have lunch on the calendar, because sometimes we get so caught up in what we're doing that we just don't do that, and I will just be like, hey, leave your desk. Like, I will demand it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think that the world is ending, like you're doing like surgery or something, and you're not. You're gonna be fine. The people that are there are gonna be there when you get back. And it's just hard whenever you're instilled in it. So that's one of the things that I find is just ensuring that people take their breaks when they should.
And another thing is get the heck off social media when you're on vacation. Don't check.
That's
I
huge.
used to get so
That's so
emotional. I know it is. But like
So hard.
when you are at work and you took a vacation and you're at Disney, don't check your work social, which I have done, so don't do that.
So many times.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that could be a whole panel, and I think it should be. Let's talk after this. No, seriously. Amongst community and social media managers, it's one of the highest rates of burnout in the gaming industry. It's really, really hard on people, especially people who take things really intensely. There's a reason why, we want to be community managers, and it's because we feel really passionately about the games that we manage, or whatever community we're managing. And for me, I've always felt that way. I love the games, I love the gaming industry, but sometimes, you have to kind of practice what I like to call willful ignorance, and just kind of turn things off, log off, turn off. And so I'm an extrovert. I love meeting new people, but that takes a different kind of social energy, in my opinion. So sometimes I have to just get out and go out with my friends. And whatever that means for you, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, recharge your social batteries in the way that works for you.
Yeah. For me, I'm actually really bad at this.
You're not like swag in the subject. I kind of feel like I'm bad at it too, but I do take the breaks, and I'm very clear to my employees that they need to take breaks, even if I don't.
Just even to see the
Would I
world.
say not what I do, please?
Yeah.
Look out your window and look at other people doing things, and then think, well, those are other people living their lives, and they've got families and everything going on, and it puts things into perspective. If you're able to do anything that puts something into perspective, I find that really helps me just pull out of maybe the intense situation I'm in.
I have to go out for a walk and leave my phone at home so that I'm not tempted, because that's how bad I am.
PAX has actually been very good because we have no cell service.
That's also very stressful. I've just been hitting the refresh button constantly.
So bad. I'm just like, I can't check Twitter, what's happening? Don't take their own advice, we're awful.
Yeah.
That's why I scheduled everything.
Be better than us. That's the answer to that question.
Do what we say, not what we do.
Okay.
Thanks,
We're
guys.
running low on time, so let's try and get through some more questions
Yeah.
real quickly.
Hi. What can you do to address toxicity on forums you can't moderate, like Reddit or Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that if you can't moderate them, then the goal there is to interact. I think just being there on the forums and the thread for Reddit. Let's use Reddit as an example. Going into the threads where people are being positive and interacting and kind of solidifying that these are the appropriate things where you're going to get dev interaction on them.
Yep.
If you interact on the unhappy ones or the people who are not even, I mean, and I'm not saying like criticism is bad. You can comment on the ones that people are criticizing you if they're being like good about it, right? I think those ones are fine, and getting in there and being like, you're gonna get dev interaction on these types of content. And then the other one's just not bothering with them, because sometimes it's not worth getting into there because it's just gonna make you look bad, or they're all gonna go at you, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely amplify the good voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all you really can do.
Thank you.
Most part.
Okay. Next question.
Preventative versus
Yeah.
reactive.
Be positive.
Hey, thank you very much for the panel, and also for somebody who's just getting started out in the community management and is like level 0, what's like a good resource for knowing what the hell you're doing?
There's a ton. I think that the biggest thing is we all live on social media. So reaching out to people in the industry, coming to events like this and networking, coming to panels like this is a really good opportunity. That's how I got to know a ton of people I know. That's how I got to know people like Susie and other people I've met at various events.
Yeah.
There's groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's
There's a Discord, I think, group as
There
well.
is a Discord
There's like
group,
there's a lot of.
It's run by the Discord community managers.
Yeah. just never be afraid to ask for help or to ask a question. Yeah.
There is actually a couple of different newsletters and websites also now that are dedicated to community and social managers. If you, I think we have to wrap up after probably one more question, but we'll be outside afterwards and I can help you with that.
Cool.
Sure.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
I think we have time for one more question, so sorry guys, but find us outside and we'll
Yeah, we'll be around.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Christopher. I'm with the Yang 2020 campaign. I was a moderator of a 500,000 plus group on a forum before social media really took off. And I've been thrust back into kind of that area recently. What's the kind of the one thing that has the best return on investment for guiding community towards like self-moderation?
You're your own example, I think.
Yeah, I mean, having these guidelines and having them from the very beginning, so that as new people come in, the community, the core of the community, know, what's what and where the line is, and then they will educate people as they come in. And like we said before, being like this force of positivity where you can go into threads and you can kind of uplift people and you can say, no, that's not how we talk here, or this isn't what we kind of concentrate on. That can help a lot. And all of that knowledge kind of flows out and keeps going on, and as your community grows, so does the awareness of that, and it's just an ever-growing, rolling out thing. I would also say as well, when your community keeps on growing and say you have suddenly a big splash of new numbers, maybe reference the guidelines again, just kind of keep them fresh, and also keep looking at your guidelines, see how they need to be tweaked, and kind of keep it, take on suggestions from the community, see what they actually want.
Yeah, community input. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.